Hey everybody, this is cBroski here, and this is my first out of many YouTube tutorials that I will be making about GUIs, graphical user interfaces, and specifically I'm going to be focusing on the card layout here. And card layout is something that I see in a lot of programs that we have nowadays, and eventually what we're going to be working towards here is a program that we can move from different windows here. And as you can see, this uses the card layout here. You push on the different buttons and you can get to different windows, and eventually we're going to get to the point where we can load up different different things through here. You can for instance, you load up a test class that I have made here in the past, and you can see some of the stuff, and then you can enter on lab scores and what have you. And so for now, what we're trying to do is we just want to make the gist of it, which is the card layout. We want to make the frame and how to do all of that stuff. So it's going to start off really basic and then get more in depth. And so let's begin here. For right now, what we have imported 3 different utilities. That's all we need. For now, the first one is the graphical Java for swing, which just deals with the different arguments between the different panels that we will eventually be using. We do need the swing. We also need the AWT here, which is the it's basically the abstract windowing toolkit, I believe is what it's called there, and that has to just do with keeping abstract information and dealing with it throughout the multiple panels that we'll be dealing with also. The last one is the same thing, but we have an event handler. You won't see that in this video. You'll see it later on when we have our action performed, because we're implementing an action listener for the buttons, but that's later on. So for right now, we're just going to be trying to make the frame, make that visible, okay? And then we will follow up later on. So right now, we have a few things that we could add into this as the static. We can do this now, or we can choose to do this later. I'm going to go through this in a little bit. Right now, let's just go ahead and get the main thing going. So let's just get the static void main. Okay. There we go. Now in here we just want to make a frame. Let's just start off really basic. So we'll call it a frame. There we go. Now notice in here I'm really relying on my pseudocode that I have. I think it really is helpful, in case you just can't think about something, or you got this roadmap here. So the next thing that we want to do, this deals with the content pane, which you will see in our later videos, but right now what we want to do, since we have made this frame, every good programmer should make it a habit to specify the parameters, all of the rules of the frame, so that way they can start testing their program and see what it looks like. And so this is what I mean by that. You're gonna want to first set the frame. You're gonna want to set that to visible. It's probably one of the first things you're gonna want to do. So if you didn't have that right here, and like let's say you program that out and you run it, okay, and let's see here. I always do this. We need to put in that public, or else Java hates you. So notice it doesn't really play. It kind of runs it for a second and then it stops there. So that's because it has no idea, if you want it to see it, if you don't want it to see it, for how long. So it just, kind of rambles on for a second. So we set it to visible, okay? So if we just run it right now, we begin getting something up here. Okay, it's really tiny and very faint. Alright, so we close that down. The next thing you can do is just start setting things like the size, and let's make that a 400 by a 100. And then let's set the location. And I want the location to be around, I don't know, like 580 by 380. Try and center it up there. And for right now, we can make this set resizable. Make that true. Later on, I'll probably false it, but it's okay. Alright, and so here we go. We just play that. Alright, we have the beginning. Everything seems to be working nice and slow. You can resize it if you start wanting to play with things. Okay, so next we're going to be following up with adding the buttons and then associating with that with making it change throughout the different panels. Alright. What's up guys, it's cBroski here, and this is my second part of this video with the card layouts. The first video was pretty lame. We basically just made a frame. That was like the overall achievement of that video. We're going to be doing a little bit more right now. The main goal here is that we're going to have this frame and we're going to make a panel. We want to put two buttons. Alright, we're going to have a next button and a quit button in here, and we're going to have like a label up top that's going to tell us it's card 1. Alright, that way later on we can see that we're flipping to the different cards. Alright, now notice right here, one thing I didn't do that I need to point out. Whenever you make a frame, you need to make a default close operation. If you don't, then this happens. If you close this window, notice how my program's still running up at the top. And, you know, you'll see that in a lot of, like, Mac applications and everything, but, you know, that's just not something, you know, that I like. So we're going to change that here. There we go, and we want it to go. Sorry about that, guys. There we go. Alright. I think that's how we do it. Yeah, get it done like that. Now if you run this, and when you're done and you want to close it, it's going to be done up there, see? So the program is done. Alright, so what we're going to want to do, first thing is that we just want to make some buttons, put them into our toolkit, and also make a static card layout. Okay, so let's just go and plug away at that right now. So the first thing you want to do when you make a card layout, make a static card layout. Keep it simple, let's call it card layout. Next thing that you're going to need to do is make a static panel. This panel is going to hold the card layout, which is going to constantly be changing the panels. Alright, so static jPanel, let's call it card equals new jPanel. There we go. Let's make two buttons right now. Remember I said I was going to make a next button and a quit button. That's what we're going to do. When you're doing a card layout, it gets a little bit weird when you try and like put next and quit like right next to each other. I'm sure there's a way, but when I do it, it does flip out a little bit, and you get like a null pointer exception. This is gonna be my quit button. All right, there we go. We have that going on. Sorry about my nose, guys. Got allergies. Here we go. So we have a frame. We made the frame from the last video. What we need to do now is we need to make a new panel. Okay, that panel is going to be our content pane, and then we have to do a few things to that. All right, so we're gonna go jPanel. We're gonna call this the content pane. All right, now this isn't going to just equal a new jPanel. All right, it's actually going to equal the get content. Let's see if I'm doing that right. There we go. Get content pane. Alright. So we got this content pane panel, and it's in charge of getting the content pane of each thing. Okay, and what do we want it to get? We want it to get the J panel. Alright, we want it to get only J panels, put them into the content pane, and then put that into the frame. Alright, and that's what this guy is. So he's only in charge of retrieving J panels that go inside of the content pane. Alright, so the next thing that we're going to want to do is, before we even make the cards, alright, we can add these cards that we're going to make. We can just, get them all ready to go into this content pane here. Alright, so we've made our card. Okay, so right now what we want to do is just put that card into our content pane, so we don't need to worry about that later on. Content pane.add, and we're going to add our card. Okay, so now we have our static panel, and that's inside of our content pane, which is inside of our frame. So there we go. We're still not going to be getting anything up here. Still going to just be the same, but hey, we're setting it up. We're setting up the whole card layout here. So the next thing to do here is to set the layout of the static panel that we have made. Okay, right here. So we need to set the layout of that, so that way it's equal to a new card layout. Okay, so to do that, we're going to go card set layout, and when we set the layout of this, it's going to be equal, right, to the static layout that we made. New card layout, just like that. So that basically is just saying that the layout of this is kind of like a custom layout that we made of. It's like a global layout, and each one of those is equal to a new card layout. So that's how you can add as many cards as you want to down the line. And then notice how we've already added that card into this content pane here, right? So everything is lining up for us. Now we kind of get to the fun stuff. In my opinion, we just are going to start making our home card. And again, that's just going to give us two boxes, or sorry, when you run this here, we're going to get a box. You'll get two buttons in here. We're going to have a next button and a quit button and a label up here that says something like, this is card 1. Okay, so we're going to make a panel. We're going to call it card H. We need to set this layout, card H. Now I usually do grid layout, okay, and what this means is in this frame I have a panel. Oh, it's not going to like this right now. In this frame I have a panel, alright, that has one column and it has 2 rows. So in a minute we're going to have, in the first row we're going to have a label, and in the second row we're going to have 2 buttons, and there's going to be 1 column there. And so that's what we are attempting to do. Hopefully it's going to make more sense in a second, if it doesn't already. So we have this grid layout. One thing that I'd like to do that I didn't really put in my roadmap is we want to create a new panel. We're going to call that the button panel, or sorry, label panel. And that's going to equal a new J panel. Now this is going to be for the first row of our frame, or of our card home panel, I should say. In here we're going to be putting a J label. That. And here we're going to say this is card 1. Okay. Now that we have made a label panel and a label, we need to add the label to its panel. Okay. The last thing to do then, of course, is to add that label panel to the card home panel. There. Alright. Alright, so now that we've finished adding the label panel to our card home, alright, everything seems to be in order here, but notice how if we play it, it's not going to give us anything. We're still stuck with the same damn thing. But that's just because we haven't added this card home to the static panel card. So we still have to do that. It's a very important step. So to kind of recap so far, we have this static card panel. We have set the layout of that to a new card layout. Okay, and then we have added that card to the content pane. And that content pane is in charge of getting only panels and putting them into that frame. Okay, that's what we've got going on. So what we need to do is we need to add this card home into our static panel. So we're going to go card.add, and we're going to call this one the card H. Alright, so just that alone should show us what we would like. I think if we just play it, we're going to get a label here. There we go. This is card 1. So we still don't have any buttons or anything. We haven't added them, but now we actually have an improvement. We're moving forward. So when we close this window down, what we need to do now, just so I don't forget later on, because I do that, I want to make it so that way later on, no matter how many cards we have, it's going to show the first card, alright, when you open the program. I don't want it to get confused later on, so we're just going to do that right now. And to show the cards, which you'll see we're going to be using a lot later on, we're going to first specify what you want it to show. We want it to show the static panel, and then which static panel, or I mean which panel of that we're going to specify the name. So it's going to show the first card, alright, the card home in there. And I made a little mistake here, not a big one. Rather than saying you want the card to show that, you want it to say the card layout. Okay, you want the card layout to show the static panel, and you want it to show this one in particular. Okay, when we run this, still it's the same guy. But now we're going to add the button panel. Okay, that's going to go in here. So make a new panel. We're going to call it BP. And then let's add our buttons. Since we've already made the buttons up top here, we just need to add them. Alright, we have that going on. Now what we need to do is add our button panel back to our card home. There we go. Let's see what we got. Beautiful. Alright, we have 2 buttons in here. Notice how there's no labels in them. That's pretty easy. It's a quick fix here. You're just going to want to come up here where we made our buttons, and let's just say next, and let's say quit. Okay. There we go. So now in the next video, what we're going to do is we just want to make a new panel. Alright, we're going to add the action performers in there. So that way when we click next, it's going to say card 2. It's going to change the whole entire panel. So that way, you know, we can see that, and then in the next panel there's going to be a button that will say back, and then we can come back to this panel here, and hopefully that's going to teach you guys a lot about card layout, and then we're going to move on from there. Alright guys, see you in a few. Okay, so this is my last tutorial on card layouts. Hopefully after this you guys will get the gist of it, and if not, you know, we can always go over things further later on. So right now, this is what we have. We have a frame, and inside of that we have a panel that is a card panel, and currently we have only made one card home panel that we've put inside of that. Okay, so right now we have 2 panels. Okay, one is our card home panel, and then we have that inside of our static panel. Okay, and that is what we have going on for us. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to make a second card, okay, that's going to go underneath this one here, alright, and that's going to have a back button inside of that. And it's going to have a label similar to this one that's going to say card 2. And when you click that back button, it's going to take us back to this original card here. First, we're going to make that card, and then I'm going to show you guys how to activate the buttons so that way we can see that card. So let's begin. What we want to do right now, starting from top to bottom, I just want to make a back button. Alright, we got our back button. And so later on we're going to make our action performed handler, but right now we don't want to do that. Let's just make another graphical interface for the second card, or I'm going to call it card 1. We have our card home, and then this is going to be our, well, card next. Let's make it card next. So we're going to make a panel card N for card next. Next thing that we're going to do, we're going to add stuff. We're going to add stuff to it. I want to make the flow layout of that card. So we're going to go card and set layout. And just like we did the previous card, we're going to do another new grid layout. And since we're only doing labels and buttons, we're only going to have 2 rows. If you're going to add, another label or some text fields or JTables or anything like that, then, you might want to make more rows. Again, that's rows to columns in there. Okay, so we have the layout set. The next thing that we're going to do is add more stuff to it. I like that, add stuff. And so what stuff do we want to add? Let's go ahead and make a new panel, and we're going to call that B panel 2. And that's going to equal a new J panel. In this panel here, it's going to hold our buttons, alright? And, I always do this, I always start with the buttons, but let me go ahead and grab this and put it down right here. So we've made a button panel 2, but before I do that, I would like to make a label 2 panel, okay? Because I want to put my label that says it's card 2. So, make a panel. There we go. Now that we got that in there, we're going to add that label. Next card. Alright, that's what we're going to call it there. So we have that. We got our panel that's going to have our label, panel 2. We have made the label 2. And now what we're going to do is just add that. The card N, we want to add our label P2. Alright, now that's got somewhere to go for that. The next thing that we're going to do, now that we've made our button panel 2, is we want to add the buttons that we made up here. And we only have one button, it's the back button. Perfect. There we go. Alright, that's looking good. What's this telling me here? Alright. So this is telling me that this isn't being used. And that's just because I didn't add this label into that panel. So we want to take the label P2, we want to add label 2 to that. There we go. Alright, so we've made a second panel, and that's card N for card next. We set the layout, we set the layout of that to a 2 to 1, so row to columns, in a grid layout fashion. We have then made a label panel, and we have stored a new label in that. Then we stored that label panel into this card N here, okay? And now we have made a button panel. We added that button to it. We're going to finish things off here by adding the BP2. Alright, so we have the VB2 in that. Everything seems to be good. Still, when you run it, we're not getting anything. It's not even technically inside of this frame. It's not even anywhere right now. When you come down here, notice how when we did the card.add card H, so we just needed, now we're going to add, alright, what are we going to call this? We're going to call this called card N, and there we go. Alright, so now our static panel has two cards, or two different panels in them that you can interchange whenever you want, which we're going to do in here. Cool. The next thing that we're going to want to do in here is make our public void action handler here. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Scratch that. Okay. The first thing that we're going to want to do now that we have set up the second card is we want to go back into our public class here. Now notice in my pseudocode I said that this is going to implement an action listener. There we go. So this is going to implement an action listener. It's going to give you some trouble until you come down in here and you put in an action performed method. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to make a public void action performed. We're going to make this an event. Alright. And I don't know why I did the semicolon in there. There we go. Okay, so we have a event in here. Everything seems to be good. Just to kind of recap so far, the last thing that we need to do essentially is just make an action so that way we can go from the home card to card next, or card 1. And that's where this comes in, is our action performed or action event. And in order for this to occur, or to be recognized, we need an action listener. Okay, so in order for us to have an action event, we need to have a listener for that. So now that we have made that, I'm going to make an object out of that because I don't like E. I want to be a little bit cooler. So we're going to go object source, and that's equal to the E get source. You don't have to do this. You can just say, like, because down here I'm going to go if, and we have a next button, so if next, or if source is equal to next. You don't have to do this. You don't have to say that. You could just say E, and you don't have to have this line in here. But I like this line. I like that. So we got our source. So if source is equal to next, if we have our next button in there, there has to be some method, something that it does in here. And if you notice down here, when you first open up the program, we told it to show the card, the static panel, and in particular, we wanted to show the card home panel of this. Okay, so we can just use the same statement, the same argument in here. So you could even just come down here and copy this. Oh, not that one. Copy this guy. Come down into here. There you go. So card layout, you want it to show the card, but we don't want it to show the home card. We want it to show the card N. Alright? So now, just that alone, when you press the next button, it's going to directly take you to the next card. Let's just see if what I did there, well, it's still not going to work. If you come in here and if you play it, and you're thinking you did something really cool here, still not going to do anything for us. And that is because we have to put in the action listener in here. We have to actually make an action listener. I'm going to call it AL. and it's going to equal a new. So every time that the action is heard, it is going to create a new card layout class. New card layout class. Now that we have an AL, the next thing to do is come down, see here where we made our next button, we have made our quit button. The next line down, you're going to want to next.add action listener, and we want to make it an AL. And we're going to do the same thing for the quit button. There. So now both buttons are equipped with the action listener. So whenever an action is performed, it's listening for it, so that way it'll carry out its duties. See what we have now? Wow. There we go. This button still doesn't have an argument here, but we're going to take care of that right now. Come in here, and again we have our source method, and if it equals to back, and in there we want it to do the same thing, and in here we want it to go back to the card H, like so. The last button, and this should top for us. Source is equal to the quits. Then I believe it's a system.exit 0. Let's see if that works for us here. Run in here, bam. Oh, this guy still isn't coming back. We didn't add our action listener to our back button, so our back button still isn't listening like the other buttons are. So it's a very simple thing we need to fix there. You just come down in here, and we are going to add an action listener to that. So we're going to go back, add action listener, AL. Alright, run this. Here's our first card. You hit next. We're at our next card. You hit back. Bam, we're back at our first card. And it's quit. Okay, so there we go. So this is the whole tutorial. I hope I didn't go too fast for you guys towards the end here. You guys can always review this again. But basically, I think the things to kind of keep from this is that you make a static card layout. Right after that, we have a static panel. Those are the two things, you know, that really you should be writing down. I hope you guys kind of did this project like your own, you know, on your own here. But we have a static panel card, and you have your static layout card layout. In here, we just kind of made our own panels. Okay, we just made them however you want. All right, and then right after your main, we just made our frame. Then we had a content pane in here, and it had this, all right in here, where it's just getting the frame contents, and we typecasted that into a JPanel, so it's only getting the different panels of that. Alright, so I hope that makes some sense for you guys. I've been looking around, and a lot of people kind of get confused about the card layouts. So if you just follow this method, I hope it makes sense. I hope it works out. This is cBroski here, and I will see you for our next tutorial, where we're going to basically use the same layout, but we're going to add from it. We're going to actually make a program useful. We're going to make like a calendar or something from this, where we can keep track of our school, you know, classes or course averages or something from there. All right, so just stay tuned. And in the next one, we're also going to be seeing a new utility here, where it's going to be the java.io. All right, that's going to be the next step in here, where we actually have input and output fields, so we can communicate between the different panels that we've made. So right now, we don't need to worry about that, and see you guys next time.